Padam Shri Rao, distinguished guests. At the very outset, I would like to talk a few words about Mr. Rao here. He has been one of the biggest public servants that India has had. He has handled the post-plague management in Surat district, for which the Government of India has awarded him with the Padam Shri felicitations. The reason I'm putting it here is that within his 5-minute talk, he covered a variety of topics, right from what could be good governance and how e-governance initiatives have been taken in India. Once he has stipulated and presented that, there is very little that the following speakers had to add on to the context that he brought about. However, given the 4 or 5 minutes that he has given to me, I would like to present a little bit of an objectivity in summary and in few visuals, what he summed up as the challenges and the way the government projects are happening. National E-Government Plan 2003-2008, this is a famous thing which almost all people who have been in the industry for the last 5 years and have worked with the Department of Information Technology have seen. To this plan, quite a few mission mode projects, quite a few projects like SWANs and SDCs were added in the later part of the year. Subsequently, they went into a project execution stage. Today, if we look at it, the success of quite a few of these projects have been phenomenal. Some of the projects that have been already rolled out for the citizens to have the services are like MCA 21, Passport Seva, CVDT, India Portal, and in states, almost all the commercial tax, VAT implementations have been happening. Over a period of last 4 to 5 years, one has seen in India a maturity from the government side towards the procurement, towards the policy making of how a large national project would be rolled out through the PMU units and the best institutional frameworks that have been put in there. This has also helped the industry and the ecosystem to grow around, and large number of players, right from small IT organizations to India's who's who like TCS, IBM, or Infosys are now very, very eager to participate. One sees in the industry, as one of the speakers said, that we clearly see a very, very big area for an opportunity to work closely with various governments in India to transform the Indian nation through the use of information technology. Now, these are the success stories, but if we really look at some of the areas as to how do we actually measure the success of these projects, which is the topic of this discussion, I would try to put it in 4 areas, which some of the previous speakers have also put it, is whether there has been a model which defines a participation of the people before an e-governance project is actually launched. Second, whether it has helped to bring in real transparency. Third, is there a matrix which has been measured without the involvement of some of the sponsors, that is the bureaucrats who actually started doing a project and put in some of the parameters to various institutions to bring in various varieties of different matrices or different variables to see how a particular project has been done. Fourthly, are we stuck with only the National E-Government Plan that has been launched a few years back and in a very regimented way the things are happening, whereas the world is changing in certain other areas which we also need to see as to whether the Ministry of IT and quite a lot of other organizations are happening with that. So these are the 4 areas that I would like to touch in the next 2 to 3 minutes. This is a sort of a visual which we would put it that the stakeholders' participation in giving inputs, and the stakeholders here would be a variety right from political masters to the village and the urban citizens, whether they are actually participating and giving inputs to people who want to initiate a statewide or a national e-project. Are their inputs being taken? I would put it the PPP model, which most of the governments as well as the industry talks about, perhaps could be renamed as people participatory process. So before a project is being taken, are there inputs that are coming? And if they are, what is the expectation? For example, a rickshawala would perhaps, for him, the good governance would be having enough of income to eat or to meet his two meals a day. For somebody, it might be putting up a road, but for a person like us, it might be 24/7 ability to fill in a form. So the expectations of the citizens have a big variety, and are there some common denominator, the minimum denominator which is taken, and then information technology, can that enable for e-governance application to be taken? That sort of a framework, if that is put in place, and then with that, in the last 5 to 7 years, in the Indian context, which have been the best practices, why projects have succeeded, if that is created, that would result into a good statewide e-government policy. Today, there are a large number of projects, there are a large number of e-policy, state IT policies, which perhaps require a sort of a change with the learnings that have happened in India, with the launch of some projects, with the participation of people. Unless and until, as the previous speakers talked about, the centricity being the citizen, unless the citizens' inputs are taken, this whole framework would perhaps not result into a good, successful implementation model. I was going through a study from the Transparency International 2008. Unfortunately, in this particular model, what they have done is they have calibrated the corruption / transparency index of all the 160 countries. This is one area which perhaps has to be seen while launching a national e-government plan or any e-government project, whether it has resulted into a significant increment in the transparency level of the project or the stakeholders. In India today, out of the 160 countries which were measured by this society, our CPI is at the 85th level. That means we are below the 50th percentile in terms of transparency. So huge amounts of funds have been invested in India. Whether it has actually resulted in the last 5 years or would it result into an improvement in the situation is something which we have to cater to. Mr. Rao talked about the removal of the intermediaries. We talked about some of the projects like the railways, or certain people talked about web-based so that the intermediaries are removed. Actually, this would help India to move up the ladder in terms of being perceived as an honest nation. There is a mathematical simulation which I would like to put before the people here. Corruption can be mathematically simulated or defined as monopoly plus discretion minus accountability into authority over transparency. If you look into this, this is something which we have to actually look at. But by putting the e-government projects or funding in the last 5 to 7 years, have we been able to finish the monopoly of different interested people? Second, have we introduced or reduced the discretion level or increased the transparency? Any one of these parameters, if it has changed, then it only we can say that yes, the return on investments of the NEGP plan or the state plan is useful and is going in the right direction. So perhaps a sort of a measurement matrix could be put around this element too. About 6 months back, IBM along with some of the researchers, we did a survey as to what were the top 5 factors which perhaps could be used, can calibrate the success of the e-government projects in India, and what were the least important elements. Some of the most important success factors people have already talked about, but what I would like to bring to the table are these are the least contributing factors from the citizens' perspective. What we could see clearly is that once a citizen, which is a 17th point, the citizens are prepared to pay for the services. They are not very bothered about the cost of a service as long as the service is made available to them. Incidentally, language is not coming out as a problem area for getting the services. It's not very necessary that the local languages have to be used because people will not be able to understand what type of services they are getting. What people are bothered about are whether there has been an awareness among people for a particular project to be launched, whether people actually know about a project or not, whether they know that a service has been launched or not. These are some of the things that people would love to see when a project is being carried out. So from a perspective of the success measurement of any project, one has to actually look into these elements. I would like to take the discussion to a different platform. People talked about 70% of Indians still living in rural India. Honestly speaking, the landscape is changing fast. One of the mayors of Denver recently talked about saying that if 19th century was the century of building empires, 20th century was the century of building nation states, the 21st century will be the century of building cities. Cities are becoming far more important as an element in the years to come. By 2050, almost all the international reports suggest that 66% of the developing nation's population will move into the cities. That means if by that time India's population hypothetically is 1.5 billion people, then almost about 1 billion people would be staying in the cities. That's the landscape which is changing. So the NEGP plan plus the political compulsions of this time asking the services to be delivered more and more without counting for the ROI only to the rural masses perhaps requires a relook. Is it necessary that all the services have to be definitely taken to rural India? Why can't we actually start looking into building an integrated framework for the emerging cities? Because absolutely everybody is witnessing the migration of the population happening and the pressures that are coming on the civic and the cities. And that is where I thought that perhaps Mr. Rao would be able to share post my discussion experiences he had as an administrator of seeing how the population has moved from and the pressures that the cities are going through. One another example is the pressure that some of the best cities today have versus some of the least governed cities is that in order to start a business in Singapore, it takes less than 3 days, whereas in some of the other cities, it goes more than about 200 days to start a business. The bottlenecks, the bureaucracy that is involved, the red tapeism, the less of technology that is there, the less of the integration of those cities with information technology results into gross mismanagement or underutilization of the best talents that those countries have. So those are certain elements that we would put in. Today, what the city life looks like is that there are different stakeholders, people, business, the city management which is dealing with water, transport, and energy management. All of these are integrated issues, and for the stakeholders to receive a very well integrated service, I think the NEGP plan in India seriously requires a relook, and keeping in mind the work that is being done by the Ministry of Urban Development under Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Program, wherein the integration with IT, integration with different stakeholders should perhaps be attempted no sooner than later, so that we have the new NEGP plan evolved, keeping some of the services and also looking into the near future. Thank you very much.